You don't move to Tokyo expecting the ground to betray you. You move because your life back home feels like it's on pause, and Tokyo is the city that never stops. You're 27, working remotely for a tech company that doesn't care where you are as long as the work gets done, and you've decided that if you're going to stare at a laptop for 50 hours a week, you might as well do it somewhere that makes you feel like you're participating in the future. So you get a digital nomad visa, find a share house in Shimokitazawa, and convince yourself this is the reset you need. The first 3 months are exactly what you hoped for. You work from cafes where the coffee costs more than your hourly rate. You explore neighborhoods that don't appear in guidebooks. You learn just enough Japanese to order food without pointing, which feels like a genuine accomplishment until you realize the staff were going to bring you food regardless. You make friends with other foreigners who are also pretending their lives have direction. Every weekend is a new district, a new restaurant, a new train line that takes you somewhere you didn't know existed. You're not building a life here. Not really. You're just existing in a place that's interesting enough to distract you from the fact that you still don't know what you're doing long term. But that's fine. That's the whole point. Tokyo doesn't ask you to have answers, it just asks you to keep moving. It's a Tuesday afternoon in September when it happens. You're in your room, second floor of the share house, on a video call with your team back in Austin. Your manager is mid-sentence about quarterly projections when your chair starts vibrating. Not shaking, vibrating. Like someone's running a massage function you didn't know existed. You glance down, confused, and that's when the room decides it's had enough of staying still. The shaking starts small. A shimmy. The kind of movement that makes you question whether you're dizzy or the furniture is. Then it escalates. The bookshelf rattles, the coat hook swings, your laptop slides 3 inches to the left, and you grab it instinctively because your brain hasn't caught up to what's happening yet, but your hands apparently have. Your manager's voice comes through the speakers. "Hey, you good? Your camera's going crazy." You open your mouth to respond, and that's when the real shaking starts. The floor doesn't just move, it rolls. It pitches like you're on a boat in a storm, except boats are supposed to move, and floors are very much not. The walls groan, not creak, groan. A deep, structural sound that comes from somewhere inside the building's skeleton. Your desk lurches forward, your chair tips, and you go down hard on your knees. The laptop hits the floor. The call disconnects. You don't care. You're trying to stand, but standing isn't an option because the floor is actively working against you. You crawl toward the doorway, some half-remembered piece of advice from a disaster video you watched once, and you wedge yourself into the frame. Your hands grip the wood so hard your knuckles go white. The building sways, actually sways. You can feel it bending, flexing, moving in ways that architecture should never move. The sound is what gets you. It's not just the building, it's everything. Glass shattering somewhere downstairs, car alarms erupting in the waves outside, a deep rumbling that feels less like noise and more like the earth clearing its throat. And underneath it all, a high-pitched creak that you realize is coming from the walls around you, the structure bending under forces it was built to withstand, but that still sound like they're going to rip it apart. It lasts 90 seconds. You know this because later you'll check the news and they'll tell you. But in the moment it feels like 20 minutes. Time does something strange when the fundamental rules of physics stop applying. When the ground, the one thing you've spent your entire life trusting to stay put, decides it's going to do whatever it wants, and then it stops, not gradually, just stops. The shaking cuts out like someone flipped a switch. The building settles, the groaning fades. You're still in the doorway, hands locked on the frame, breathing in short, shallow gasps that sound too loud in the sudden silence. You wait. You don't know what you're waiting for. Maybe for it to start again. Maybe for the building to collapse in the aftermath. Maybe just for confirmation that it's actually over. Your phone buzzes on the floor where it fell. You crawl over and pick it up. 17 notifications. Messages from people back home who saw the news before you did. A government alert in Japanese that you run through a translator. Magnitude 6.8. Epicenter 40 kilometers west of Tokyo. Strong shaking, check for damage, expect aftershocks. Aftershocks. You learn what that word means over the next 6 hours. Aftershocks. They hit every 20 to 40 minutes, some barely noticeable, some strong enough to send you back into the doorway with your heart trying to escape through your ribs. Each one resets the fear. You can't adjust. You can't normalize. because every time the floor moves, your brain has to recalculate whether this is the one that brings the building down. The power is out, the internet is dead, your phone works, but the network is overloaded. Calls won't connect. Messages send and then sit there, spinning, undelivered. You're alone in your apartment with no information except what's coming through the government alerts, and those are in Japanese formal enough that the translation app struggles. You go to the window. Outside, the street looks almost normal. No collapsed buildings, no fires, just people standing in clusters on the sidewalk, looking up at their apartments like they're trying to decide whether it's safe to go back inside. A few cars are stopped in the middle of the road, hazards blinking. Nobody's honking. Everyone's just standing there in this strange collective pause. Your neighbour from across the hall, a woman in her 30s you've nodded at maybe twice, knocks on your door. She's holding her cat, a fat orange thing that looks annoyed about being carried. She says something in Japanese. You shake your head. She switches to broken English. You okay? You safe? You nod. She nods back. Then she just stands there for a second and you realise she's not checking on you. She's checking that she's not alone. You tell her you're fine. She bows slightly and goes back to her apartment. The cat glares at you over her shoulder. Night comes. The power is still out. You eat a convenience store rice ball by candlelight, which would be romantic if you weren't doing it because the infrastructure failed. You try to sleep. You can't. Every sound is a potential tremor. The building settling sounds like the start of another quake. A truck passing outside feels like the ground moving. You lie there, eyes open, waiting. The power comes back at 4 o'clock in the morning. The lights flick on. The fridge hums to life. Your laptop still on the floor chimes as it reconnects to the internet. You grab it. 63 unread messages. Your mum sent 12 of them. Your manager sent 4. Your co-workers created a group chat to confirm everyone was alive. You type out responses. Yes, I'm fine. Yes, the building's okay. No, I don't know if I'm coming into the office tomorrow. You check the news. The epicenter was in Chiba. Magnitude revised to 7.1. No major structural collapses in Tokyo, but the surrounding areas got hit harder. Train lines are suspended. Highways are closed for inspection. The Shinkansen is down. The city is functional but fragile and everyone's waiting to see if something worse is coming. You don't go into the office. Nobody does. The company sends an email saying remote work is authorized until further notice, which is corporate speak for we're all so scared. You work from your apartment, but you keep your shoes on all day. You don't know why. It just feels important to be ready. The aftershocks continue. Dozens of them over the next week. Magnitude 4.2, magnitude 3.8, magnitude 5.1, that one at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're awake before you're conscious, already moving toward the doorway in the dark. Your body has learned a new reflex. Feels shaking, fine structure. It's automatic now. You start noticing changes. The conveni near your apartment has empty shelves where the bottled water used to be. The hardware store sold out of flashlights and battery packs. People on the train stand differently, weight distributed, knees slightly bent, like they're ready to brace at any moment. Nobody talks about it. It's just something everyone does now. 2 weeks after the quake, you're walking home from the station and you see a crack in the sidewalk you don't remember. It's small, maybe 6 inches long. Maybe it was always there. But you stop and stare at it anyway, because now every crack is evidence. Every shifted tile, every slightly misaligned brick. The city looks the same, but you're reading it differently now. Your manager schedules a one-on-one. She asks how you're doing. You say fine because that's what you say. She pauses, then tells you the company is offering relocation assistance for foreign employees who want to return home. Temporary, just until things stabilize. She's not pressuring you, just making sure you know it's an option. You thank her. You don't take it. Because here's what nobody tells you about earthquakes. They don't just shake the ground. They shake the assumption that the ground was ever stable to begin with. You thought Tokyo was permanent. Concrete and steel and infrastructure built to outlast you. But now you know that the whole city is just sitting on top of something that moves whenever it feels like it. And all the engineering in the world is just a negotiation with physics that physics can end whenever it wants. You start seeing the city differently. The skyscrapers aren't symbols of human achievement anymore. They're calculated risks. Every building is a bet that the next quake won't be the one that exceeds the design specifications. Every train you board is running on tracks that could buckle. Every bridge you cross is holding together because it hasn't been tested beyond its limits yet. The thing is, everyone else already knew this. Every person who was born here, who grew up doing earthquake drills in elementary school, who learned to check for exit routes before sitting down in a restaurant. They've always lived with this. You're the only one who thought stability was guaranteed. Your co-worker Tanaka tells you about the big one, not this one. The one everyone's waiting for, the Tokai earthquake, magnitude 8 or higher, predicted for decades. Could happen tomorrow, could happen in 50 years. The entire city has been rebuilt with it in mind. That's why the buildings flex. That's why there are evacuation routes painted on every street. That's why your apartment has that earthquake kit you thought was paranoid when you moved in. He says this casually, the way someone mentions traffic. Then he goes back to eating his lunch. You realise that living in Tokyo means living with a countdown clock that has no numbers on it. Just the certainty that it's counting. 3 months after the quake, you're walking through Shibuya at night. The scramble crossing is packed. Thousands of people moving in choreographed chaos. Screens flashing advertisements 40 feet high. Music bleeding out of storefronts. The noise, the light, the density of it all. This intersection is one of the most photographed places on Earth. It's what people think of when they think of Tokyo. And you're standing in the middle of it, watching all these people cross, and you're thinking about the plates beneath you. The Pacific plate subducting under the North American plate at a rate of 8 centimeters per year. The pressure building, the energy accumulating, waiting. None of these people are thinking about it. They're thinking about dinner, about the meeting tomorrow, about the argument they had with their partner, about whether they should buy the shoes they saw on sale. They're living their lives on top of a geological time bomb, and they do it so naturally that it looks like freedom. You used to think that was denial. Now you think it might be the only rational response. Because what's the alternative? Leave? Go back to a place where the ground doesn't move, but nothing else moves either? Where safety is real, but so is the feeling that you're watching your life happen to someone else. You stay. Not because the fear goes away, it doesn't. You still tense up when trucks pass. You still check the earthquake app twice a day. You still keep your shoes by the bed. You stay because fear and life aren't opposites. They're just two things that exist in the same place. And Tokyo taught you that stability was never the point. The point is what you build, knowing it won't last forever. You meet someone, a translator from Osaka who moved here for the same reasons you did, running towards something that felt bigger than the life she had. You have coffee in Shimokitazawa. She tells you about the first quake she experienced after moving here, magnitude 5.3. She hid under her desk and called her mother crying. You laugh, not at her, with her, because you did the exact same thing. You date. You take her to the used bookstore in Jimbocho that you found by accident. She takes you to a tiny jazz bar in Kichijoji, where the owner only plays vinyl and the drinks cost too much and it's perfect. You walk through the city together and she points out things you missed. The vending machine that only sells hot drinks in winter. The shrine with the moss-covered fox statues. The ramen shop that's been in the same family for 60 years. She asks if you ever think about leaving. You tell her the truth. Every time the ground shakes, and every time you choose to stay anyway. She nods. She gets it. Of course she does. She's still here too. The ground will move again. Maybe tomorrow, maybe tonight while you're asleep. Maybe 20 years from now when you've forgotten what it feels like. But you're not waiting for stability anymore. You're just here, living on top of the fault line, building something that matters precisely because it's fragile. That's what Tokyo is. 14 million people choosing temporary over safe, choosing the life that moves. The next time someone asks why you stayed in a city built on shifting plates, you won't have an answer that makes sense to them. You'll just say you like it here, and they'll think you're talking about the food or the trains or the neighborhoods. But what you'll really mean is that you finally found a place that's as uncertain about its future as you are about yours. And somehow, that makes you feel less alone.